Hey there, Film Buds. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. I'm your host, Paul.
And I'm Lauren.
And we are 1 week away from Halloween.
Woo!
Well, a few days. But, it's Halloween weekend next weekend.
Yes.
Because Halloween is on a Monday, lamely.
Lamely indeed.
But it's a very exciting time. Halloween is our favorite holiday. It's our wedding anniversary. We've got the next slasher extravaganza coming up. Next weekend. You sons of bitches should be excited.
Exactly. You sons of bitches,
that's right.
you.
There's a lot to be excited about. Dear, how are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be home. The weekend is almost upon us.
Yeah.
As always.
Yeah, we're recording, on Dear Friday Eve. But you're, of course, listening to this on a Friday. So I'm certainly chomping at the bit, for the weekend.
Yes. I'm desperate, honestly. because with the weekend comes a lighter work week for me in the near future, and I'm much looking forward to that.
No, yeah. No, it's been a fun Halloween season so far. I was thinking about it, and we've really touched on a lot of different things in relation to horror this month. And we've really traveled around the world as well, a little bit as well. A little bit is my redundancies anyway. But I've really enjoyed this month so far. And, our spooky... By the way, we also... Not only is it Halloween time, but just in time for Halloween, we officially adopted Dear Santana. So we now also have an official black cat. The spooky mascot of Halloween running around here.
Yep, and he's the spooky king, currently watching us from behind a stack of papers.
Yeah. Just glowing eyes from the dark.
Yeah, always.
And so, I've really enjoyed this month, though, so far. We started out with a Ty West, horror film, very, very small, very intimate. Then we did our La Llorona episode, which was also very intimate. A lot of the horror stuff that we've done, again, this coming movie that we're going to talk about today, Raw, very, very, personal, very small cast, primarily. It's been a very interesting month, and I don't think that it was by design that it all kind of weirdly fit together on a certain level, but I think that it has to a degree. What do you think?
Well, no, I think that you're completely correct. And I guess I'll also say this. I think that horror lends itself really well to the idea of like an intimate space, because intimacy can make you nervous. Depending on what kind of intimacy it is, whether it being like strangers being too close to you, or being, in a crowded space, or, being intimate with another person. These are all things that like will fire signals in your body. And so like the idea of putting yourself in like a tight environment with a tight cast in this horror setting is also kind of just like the nails on the chalkboard aesthetic of it. It's kind of completing the whole feeling of things encroaching upon you, of feeling closed in.
The intimacy and horror of your own body.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And how the ultimate claustrophobic experience, right? To be trapped in some sort of way in your own body, or to feel trapped, or to be undergoing a process in your body that is also very isolating, So... No, I totally get where you're coming from with that.
Or like, in Barbarian, where it's a lot of like these intimate moments with our lead that's just like, her doing things, it's her like locking doors and these processes that she does to make herself feel safe in uncomfortable situations, It's It's really interesting, actually. You know, the further you go down this rabbit hole that I've picked at.
Well, and horror has to, at some point, horror does have to, especially exceptional horror. I mean, you can fill it with jump scares and crap and have it be unexceptional. But I think, truly, great horror, the bone-chilling stuff, the stuff that really sticks with you in some way, it does have to break some sort of intimate barrier at some point, because that is also truly where your fear lies, right? You don't wear your badge of fear, outward. Fear is a guarded thing. And so at some point you have to enter some sort of intimate space for the character, and then also through that the audience, to also create that heart palpitating fear response.
But that's also why, when our leads make it to the end,
the catharsis.
It's so cathartic, because you can finally breathe. Mm-hmm. And you're with them entirely in this moment, instead of feeling like they are somehow like separate.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But it's been a very interesting month, and like I said, it's also, of course, been international. It's been America, Guatemala, and now, with this episode, France. So we've also really gotten a nice swath of, low budget, more independent horror filmmaking as well, from a lot of globular perspectives, and I think that's been a lot of fun about this first batch of episodes that we've did. The slasher extravaganza is a different beast.
Just you wait.
Just you wait. And honestly, I've really enjoyed that, and so I thought that we would talk about that. I also thought that maybe after that we would give them a little bit of a quick review of Halloween Ends. Some people might have read my thoughts already on Letterboxd, but I thought that the people might want to hear your thoughts on Halloween Ends.
Interesting. Okay.
So, I think that that's sort of what I had in mind for the episode, and I guess we should just jump right on into it.
Okie dokie. Fantastic.
So, our first movie of the episode is Raw from 2016. It is written and directed by Julia Ducournau, who did Titane, which we reviewed earlier this year. Mm-hmm. And I was honestly just so infatuated with Titane. It's a movie that I think about pretty regularly. And I immediately kind of, when October came back around, was like, I want to do her other one. And the premise is a young woman studying to be a vet develops a craving for human flesh. Our cast is Garance Marier, Ella Rumpf, Rabat Knight Ofella, and Laurent Lucas. And it is rated R, and it's an hour and 39 minutes. Dear, what did you think of Raw?
I thought that this movie was very, very interesting. For me, I guess for me, it wasn't necessarily like the scariest thing that I'd ever seen before. It definitely had moments that were meant to make you uncomfortable, but I guess like this just wasn't that for me, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But that's totally fine, because it didn't take away from any of the experience of this young woman going down this rabbit hole into cannibalism. It didn't take away from the story at all. It just, I think, helped me get through some of the cringier moments of it a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. But I thought this movie was fascinating. I loved all of the M. Night Shyamalan twists that kept happening. It just, the story for me was hard to look away from. It kind of reminded me of, I guess, what people have told me of things like Animal House, where it's this very like frat kind of hazing that's happening to these freshmen of veterinary school. That's also something that's so fascinating that they're vets. That's not something that any movie I can ever name, other than Dr. Dolittle, where they're like, we're going to focus on a vet of any kind. But I think that also gave them a lot of liberties to do a lot of weird things with, like, animals and stuff like that. Which I'm not sure, I'm not sure how much of that was fake or not, actually. So that changes my opinion on some of it. Because it's a French film, so, you have to wonder here.
I mean, and theoretically, even here, you could probably have gotten consent to film, a cadaver.
True. No, that's totally fair, but I think
because technically no animals would have been harmed in the making of the film.
No, and I totally understand that. I totally get that. But if it had been a human, we wouldn't have seen it.
No.
And I think that's the thing
that would have been a prop, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's, I guess, where it's a little squiffy for me. But all that aside, this movie was not what I was expecting at all, I guess. I didn't really know what I was expecting from the title alone, because you guys have to understand, I go into these movies blind. Other than, like, whatever you tell me about it, like, I don't look up anything about it. I don't know who's in it. I don't really...
And not to be rude, but sometimes what I tell you is a real hit or miss of what sticks.
So, there's that. I'm a busy lady. I gotta look at numbers all day. I forget a lot of details to movies. I'm a very visual person. So for me, I go into most of these movies super blind. And just from title alone, I don't know, I guess, what I was expecting. But, like, I think that this movie is just really well done. It almost kind of reminds me of, like, a more interesting, I guess, version of, like a Twilight or something, where it's like, these young people going on an adventure, but it gets really twisted and weird and hazy and drug induced. It's like Dazed and Confused, But instead of it being drugs and alcohol, it's a bunch of random thing happening while this woman is going through, like, flesh withdrawal. I'm not sure what's happening.
Her first film was one that, or not her first film, but the first one that we saw, Titane, was one that really was such just a lightning bolt, and I was so, I knew the sort of through line, the line that everyone was sort of sold on the it's a must-see film, a woman has sex with a car, I knew that element going into it, but the depths to which that movie then went and the layering of that story was so fascinating. And it's again, like I said, a movie that I think about a lot, because it's a really, really vibrant film, firing on a lot of different levels. It's great performance, it's great writing, it's visually striking, it's excellent filmmaking across the board, and it was also incredible body horror. And body horror is one of the things that, definitely, as far as the horror things that really, bother me, body horror is definitely probably one of the genres that's more up there for me. That's a very affecting image on screen. And, if the, to a certain degree, some of it doesn't matter, like a Saw movie, you can sort of, for me, turn out some of it, because at a certain point it's also just like a carnage factory.
Yeah, it's like a cartoon almost.
But at this sort of point, and in this, again, level of intimacy, it becomes that visceral, exactly as taboo as it means to be thing. And, you were talking about the difference of it being an animal body if it was a real animal cadaver versus a real human cadaver. And that's kind of really, and you being like, I'd be more uncomfortable, or it's more questionable if it's a real human cadaver on screen.
Well, I guess I was more, I thought that it could have been like a fake animal, and then I started to think about it, and I was like, I don't think that that's fake. And that was me reevaluating my opinion of the movie.
But that idea of using a real carcass, not using a real carcass, this engagement with death and the body and a literal physical dead thing being on display in a movie also taps in literally directly to, what the fear of cannibalism sort of taps into, right? Which is part of this taboo of things that are abhorrent to nature, such as we understand it. Even though, and oftentimes they're related to a lot of things that are, more part of a baser nature, if you will, right? Cannibalism and, living in your own filth and things like that, things that like some animals in the wild do, like a pig lives in its own filth and it's a cannibal. A pig will eat a pig. So,
but they're not too plussed about the details.
No, but that's again, this sort of layering of the difference between, the more baser nature of man, and the distinction of man and the blurring of that line and like the horror, therein of like Jekyll and Hyde. And so I think that this movie really starts to tap into that idea. And for me, it is through cannibalism. One, it's hitting on one of the big taboos, right? That definitely is one of those cringier things. And I think that it captures cannibalism in a way that isn't like, Hannibal Lecter perfectly cutting open a person to eat their liver. It's this raw animal, very guttural version of cannibalism. That is, if it was a werewolf eating a person like that, you wouldn't blink. But the fact that it's a person doing it. But I think that also there is this kind of fascinating werewolf-like story happening almost between, for me, the sisters almost felt like Romulus and Remus. These two sort of wolf siblings tearing at each other. And I thought that was a really interesting narrative element at play inside of, in particular, the sibling story, was this kind of weird animal rivalry that was taking place in between them, where ultimately it does literally end in biting and scratching, and I thought that it was so fascinating. And then honestly, the real twist in the knife is the final ending. And it's probably also one of the most horrifying implications of the movie as well. And I've really tried to put my finger on why I found this movie like so particularly unsettling, because I definitely found it more bothersome than you did. And I honestly, I still haven't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess, like, for me, I've seen a lot of, like, zombie stuff. And, like, for me, it was just kind of, like, a really tame version of one of those. Because it wasn't like they were out here, World War Z-ing it, like, running at full speed, trying to, like, tackle some people down and nom them to death. And you're like, it was just, like, a little thing here, a little thing there, until it escalates, out of control. And, like, one big domino falls, and that's just it. But I guess for me, it was more just fascinating to watch her. And not really focus on the fact that it was, like, all the cannibal stuff. It was more this kind of watching this character transform from who she was as a vegetarian to the moment that she tasted meat, and her first response is to be sickened by it, but then it's this infatuation with it, this lust for it, truly, and the fact that it's tied so heavily also to, like, sex as well is really interesting, because it has so many layers to it, you know. I guess, like, I found this movie fascinating because, like, while she's going through this, like, metamorphosis literally before our eyes, you know, she's also having to deal with the fact that she's in this environment where she is being hazed on a regular basis by a bunch of fucking assholes. And at any moment in time, like, there are several times when she literally picks up her mattress off of the quad, because they have thrown all of the freshies mattresses into a pile in the greens, and that's ridiculous. I would be furious if I came, you know, after a long day of being at class and just wanting to go back to my dorm, having to then drag my mattress back upstairs. You know, no wonder she kind of loses her cool a little bit. This place sucks a lot.
No, absolutely.
It's like, it's just, there's no rest. But I also really enjoyed her weird, like, relationship with her roommate. You know, the whole idea that there could be co-ed roommates like that. I mean, mind you, they had separate bedrooms, but that would have never happened in the States.
No, probably not.
Not on purpose.
No.
And it would have been very quickly corrected.
Yeah.
Because instantly everybody would have been like, "Oh God, they're gonna have sex," because that's the natural American hetero response to everything.
What I also really enjoyed about this film was seeing a lot of course, the origin of a filmmaker. You know, the fact that we opened with a car crash so instantly, again, I was like, nope, this is her. You know, like, we're watching one of hers.
I mean, did she experience, like, a major car crash in her life?
I believe that she did experience a car crash to some degree.
Because they're also, well, no, the first one is more when she was a child. Mm-hmm. So it's like weird family dynamics as well.
Yeah.
You know, very, very distant until the wolf's, you know, clothing is revealed underneath. The wolf in sheep's clothing. Mm-hmm. You know, she's this timid, never had sex, you know, person. And literally through this metamorphosis of plunging herself headlong into, you know, complete animal impulse, she also does through that find greater confidence, to a degree, you know, a sort of sense of self-assuredness, that she definitely lacked. And you know, discovers something about herself, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent. And she also creates an entirely different relationship with her sister as well. And honestly,
and her sister kind of needed to get knocked down a little bit.
Yeah.
And does feel so at the end. Yeah.
Because it's very much implied that, like, the sister was never, you know, like our main. She was wilder, harder to manage, kind of from the get-go. So, because you kind of feel that
it's sort of like the runt of the litter finally fighting, you know, the wild animal of the family.
Exactly,
you know?
Exactly. Because, like, the very first moment you meet the sister is, or at least one of the first moments you meet the sister. This isn't the exact first moment. This is the moment that sticks in my brain. Is when our main girl is going to eat, is being forced to eat the rabbit heart.
Justine
is being forced to eat the rabbit heart, and, like, she's like, well, I'm a vegetarian. And the guy, and she's like, you know, me and my sister. And he's like, well, who's your sister? You know, and they call over to Alex. And she comes over just so nonchalant. And he's like, you're a vegetarian? She's like, no, I'm not. Like, it's so, like, what are you even talking about? I've never done that before.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so this whole idea of the fact that, like, you know, the moment she got set loose, who? What family? I don't care about those people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because we also never really, until later on in the movie, you know, they go to meet up with the sister when they drop off Justine, and she's a no-show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first time that we see her is she randomly bumps into her in the middle of this rave that she's been brought to by, like, weird haze ritual.
Yeah, they literally crawled there. It's so strange.
And I think that also she has this haircut that for me was at times almost evocative of the old Wolfman pompadour.
Oh. No, I get that. I get what you mean. She looked exactly like Rufio.
Yeah,
you know
the swooped back, you know, great hair, you know.
No. I know exactly what you mean. No, she looked like she was
Teen
gonna,
Wolfish.
Yeah, exactly. She looked like she was gonna be a part of some, like, gothic rock band, but, like, that's not really gothic, but, like, they're cool.
She's gonna be in the live action version of the Hex Girls.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because she's got sex appeal.
Yeah. So no, and that's another thing about Julia Ducournau as a filmmaker that I think definitely also does partially relate back to, you know, a European and a French sensibility in specific. Because of this sort of unabashed nature to take on certain things, you know, so full force of vision, you know, and to also get so intimate, you know, not just in terms of exploring sex, but just in terms of exploring the intimacy of people. It's a really, really interesting... This is another thing that I wanted to bring up. She's able to get into such an intimate space that it does, I think, also make small moments all that more horrifying or tense or sincere. Mm-hmm. Because she can get so personal and into that moment. And I think that it's one of the ways that she stands out as a filmmaker. The other thing that I was going to bring up is that on a certain level it almost kind of reads... as a coming-of-age story, almost akin to, like, a Carrie. Where, you know, you've got this girl, she's a virgin, she then gets, you know, this first blood experience, and then she ends up having, like, a waxing, you know, and this kind of metamorphosis into, you know, being like a more sexually, you know, active woman. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's also, it has this kind of Carrie-ish dynamic for me as well.
Mm-hmm. I loved the fact that because it's, you know, not an American film, there was, like, just random, casual, everyday, normal nudity.
Yeah, just people being...
You know, because there was, like, the moments, because, you know, as our lead, Justine, a lot of this movie was, like, set around, like, beds. But so, like, we saw her a lot in her, like, her pajama wear, which was just, like, a loose tank top and, like, a pair of underwear. And, like, no, that's completely accurate. That's totally fair, you know. That's pajamas that I wear. But, the fact that, like, we weren't, like, basically taping that to her the entire time because we were like, God forbid anything may show through this loose tank top as she is living her life in her bedroom without, you know, the peering eyes of the lens watching her, quote unquote. Like, if this is supposed to be real life, then let's break this barrier of being like, but real people don't do these things, you know?
They're lying post-coital with the sheets in just so.
Yeah. And right after sex, they get out of bed, swoop on their underwear after definitely taking the covers a little bit with them to cover whatever was going to be seen. Like, who does these things? Like, this isn't natural behavior.
Yeah.
You know, you're almost like AI people. You're not real. You're robots. pretending to be humans. And so I just really enjoyed how to your point, this movie felt really natural. That they were not just characters, they were people with different layers, and it was really interesting, honestly, on every level. I really enjoy this director a lot. Her vision is really fascinating, and definitely you are correct. She has a thing for cars. People doing crazy things around cars. Oh my gosh,
which is also a little king.
Yeah, I mean, the sister running in front of the cars.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Anxiety inducing.
That was the most stressful thing for me. I was like, ah. And then they just brush it off like, whatever.
So if you had to give Raw a score out of 5, what would you give it?
I'm gonna give Raw a 4.5.
Okay.
I'm just gonna knock, a little off, because, like, at the end of the day, I do go to horror movies for, like, the rush of being at a horror film. And, like, for me, this one just didn't, like, quite get there. But I do think that it is worth a watch. It's really interesting, if you give it a chance. It's a slower horror movie. And sometimes simple is good.
I'll give it a 5. I squirmed.
You did. No, I
don't know.
think that's totally valid.
It's just one of those things that what's I think really interesting for me is very few of the Texas Chainsaw movies make me as uncomfortable. There's only one Texas Chainsaw movie I think that's truly made me as uncomfortable as Raw did. And it didn't do it all the time. It didn't intermittently. And that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Well, yeah, but I actually think that movie, for me, was more squirmy.
Okay, we'll have to get into that when we talk about these movies in full.
Okay, that's totally fine.
We'll have to put a pin in that.
But, like, if I'm having to pick between,
what
Titane,
made you squirm more?
Oh, yes,
yeah.
No, for sure. But, like, I think that this is a budding version for me of Titane, because I thought that Titane was hard to watch.
Yeah, it was like, hard as shit to watch.
And, like, for me, like, this was just like the budding version of that. Like, I can totally see where she ends up. For sure. It's all here. But there's more of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess with all that said, the other big thing that I wanted to talk about, and we won't talk about as long, I wanted to, and I thought about tagging it on to the slasher extravaganza, but I think that we'll just talk about it a little bit here instead. Let's talk about Halloween Ends. Like I said, you can read my Letterboxd review. I'll, of course, tag on some thoughts here. But I wanted to give you a chance to share with the people.
With the people.
Your opinions on Halloween Ends. So, dear, give us what you thought.
I liked it. It's definitely, I think, of the David Gordon Green movies, like, not my top pick. I'm a diehard for Kills. Like, I really love Kills. It is a roller coaster ride. It's a rush. It is horrifying, and it totally made me squirm so many times the first time I watched it. Like, I have that whole day, like, Xeroxed in my brain the very first time we watched that movie. And this movie, like, we watched it in theaters, and I was like, it's gonna be that. And then Halloween Ends came in and was like, strolling. It was doing, like, for
Season of the Witch pace.
No, yeah. And, like, I totally get that. I think that that's totally fine. But I think that there were parts that, because of that hard slowdown between these two films, I think that that's, for me, like, it was definitely a come down. you know, after such a high, you know, we dropped even further ebbed down than the first one, and it's just like we went from 90 to like I want a cool like 40. We're chilling in this movie for like a lot, and it's fun because I love all of the Laurie and I always do this because I always think that his name is something different.
Corey.
No, Laurie and the cop guy.
Oh,
Hawkins.
yes.
Because of the dance. Sadie Hawkins dance. I thought that all of that was precious. Like their little like budding romance in their 70s is adorable. Like it's so stinking cute. You can't help but like wanna dive right into it. And then it's like this exact opposite with Corey and Allison, where they've got this like really like fueled by passion and wanting to burn the world down energy, and I'm totally here for it. And then we randomly aside to like Michael sometimes, and for me honestly, like I could have done this entire movie without him almost, because I was so, you know, enraptured with what was going on with our main lead that was Corey, that I was like, no, I understand where they're going with this. They're doing a full season of The Witch and just not going to bring him into it. And then they were like, no, Michael's just creeping in the tunnels. Is a sad son of a bitch. And like, I understand exactly what you know, where it's going for, and I think that this movie is the end to this trilogy and to this legacy, and I think that it does a really interesting job of focusing on, you know, people who have experienced trauma, either from, you know, self-inflicted trauma, even if it's accidental, to, you know, being viewed by their trauma as the heroine or the hero of that moment. And I think that it, you know, it opened a lot of thoughts, a lot of, for me, because I've never, I guess, experienced something to that degree, something so big on a first-hand basis that, you know, my entire self-image after that point is being judged upon by that moment in my life.
Yeah, your reality becomes shaped around that.
Yeah, so you know, I couldn't imagine what it's like to be in the place of somebody who's experienced something to that degree. You know, it made me start thinking of that all of that drama that was happening with not the Bundy one, but the other one, Dahmer, you know, that's going out about the fact that the family was not informed at all about that. And then this movie basically was like, this is what it's like to be these people. You know, constantly every time you think that you're going to have a good day, being reminded of the thing that it was the worst day of your life.
Yeah.
Without any warning, because somebody else was mad at you because of the things that you did that you know, can't take back at this point, but also it's not your fault. And I think that those are the really strong points about this movie for me. I think that a lot of my issues with the film would have been, I think that this film just needs to be longer.
Yeah.
Because I felt like they opened a lot of interesting doors, but we just didn't have time for them because of the fact that we were doing other stuff.
And we're not going to have a 2-hour 20-minute
horror
slasher.
Film. Yeah. You know. But it definitely had a few moments where as always, David comes in with the, well, I wasn't expecting that to happen. You know, even in this one, there was a lot of those moments where I was like, oh, you know, out of nowhere. And then we would hang out for a while, and I think that that's also like totally fine. But also, I think that's probably where people are having their issues with the film. It's just a lot of the pacing.
No, I think that that's all fair. I think that this movie is incredibly thoughtful. I think it does have a few technical issues, but I think that in terms of theme and payoff, it ends up overcoming for me a lot of those issues for the most part. I do think that it was intentionally marketed incorrectly.
Well, he's done this every single time.
Yeah. And I also think that I did enjoy still having Michael, if only in the sense that he almost got turned into this very strange gothic figure. This strange, sort of golem, living in a crypt. And I was really, really fascinated by Michael's choice to just kind of... It almost felt like he thought that he had did enough, to a degree. And I think that that's really interesting that he had, it seems like as far as he was concerned, finished. And I think that that's a really, really interesting place also for the character of Michael. And that he had almost forgotten how good it was to kill until Corey, brought, that sort of rush back into his life. And then also, of course, openly challenged him and took his mask. And I think that was a really... I think that this movie goes down a lot of really interesting rabbit holes.
I think...
And Corey is a great lead. He's fantastic, sorry.
No, you're totally fine. I was gonna just really quickly go off of something that you said about, Michael being this golem. I think that for me, as an actor, as a performer, I think that it would have been an interesting choice for them to have, still played with the classic Michael-isms of the physicality, but to, I guess, change them somehow in this time because he hasn't had, all of the luxuries that he's had before after a killing spree. Is to get to go back to the hospital and get to get cared for and get to, get all the things, get to heal in a proper way. He has been shot. He has been stabbed. He is, all of these ungodly things have happened to him. And the thesis of this story is to tell us that Michael is a man and nothing more than that. But then they still have him do exactly all of his Michael things at the same speed.
I think for me, he almost, when you first see him, is almost cramped up.
I guess I think that...
Like he's almost feeling a little rigid.
Well, yeah, but I guess for me, instead of making him into the Tin Man, making him into, the Hunchback. Mm-hmm. Making him have to have healed in a way that causes him...
It fused the bone in a weird way.
Yeah, or something, not just, the fact that, he's lost fingers and has missing an eye and then, has these little things that we have, but, he has gone through so much, and so what, it's 4 years later, and, he, goes to, grab that kid, and he can't, hold him too terribly long, but the moment he starts killing again, it's endorphins can only do so much, We can't also be Michael can lay on the ground and still do and then he sits up exactly the same way. Or the constantly doing the head tilt thing. And it's totally fine when Michael is in full form. But I think that it would have been interesting to still continue the fact that he was injured and was weaker throughout this entire time, Other than the fact that, he's maybe not out killing as many people as he did in the last one this time around.
No, it definitely feels like he's really only doing it for sustenance.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, play on that a little bit more, Where were those bodies? Where we went into his tunnel. Why didn't we run over the errant skeleton?
Yeah.
Michael saved a knife in a wall. Where did the bodies go?
Well, and who knows? Maybe it's a fake out. Maybe all these missing people aren't actually Michael.
And it's just people thinking that it is. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I assumed that it was Michael because it was the old guy who told us about it.
He's also a little bit, I mean, he's not necessarily all together.
I mean, that's true. That's fair. I mean, he was a very elderly, homeless man.
So there is a chance that he's not fully with it.
No, for sure. I think that that's totally fair. But I guess that's why, going back a little bit, I guess that's why for me, I could have had less of Michael. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't giving me anything different about him. He was just now a man, but none of the things about him physically told me that. It was just a bunch of people telling me that, like...
Well, I think the benefit of having Michael show up and even if he does eventually get back into killing form, I think the benefit of having him be there and be even just so, even if it's brief, diminutive, does, I think, hammer home this idea that he's at his lowest moment and the town is tearing itself apart, on a certain level better than it ever has.
Well, I guess that would have been, for me, laid even further home with the
fact
that...
If he was just dead or gone.
Or the fact that he just couldn't do it anymore. What if Corey comes in and is the new Michael fully, where he keeps bringing these people to Michael as, like, offerings, being like, look at what I've done for you. Mm-hmm. Instead of him going off and doing his own thing while being imbued with the evil of Michael's stare. And, like, while Michael just goes, you know what, stabbing does feel good again. Let me shake off my dusty bits and, like, get back to killing again. Full steam, let's go. He even stabbed a woman. He lifted her off the ground and stabbed her in the chest. It almost felt like oh, this happened to Bob. Remember Bob? But I was like, there's no way that he could do that. Mm-hmm. If you're telling me that this is a man, there's the human being. There's just no way that he could physically do that after everything that he's experienced.
No, that's fair. So if you had to give it a score out of 5, what would you give it?
I think that I will give Halloween Ends... I'm going to give Halloween Ends a 4.
Okay.
I'm going to give it a 4.
You can go to my letterbox to see what I gave it.
Rude.
The last thing that I wanted to bring up is we got the new trailer dropped this week for Creed 3.
Yes, we did.
It's directed by Michael B. Jordan. It's his first time round in the director's chair. What were your thoughts on the trailer?
I thought that it looked like a Creed movie.
I'm more interested in Creed 3 than I was in Creed 2.
That's fair. I don't even remember what Creed 2 was about.
It's the Russian one. The Russians come back.
Yes, I couldn't even tell you what it was about. No, I think that that's fair. I liked the fact that it was, from what I could tell, it was an all-black cast. I thought that was really great, that there was no, like, oh, but it's this minority fighting against the majority because this is the story that we're telling. Because also I think that that's being told completely by the story that we're getting without it having to be portrayed as, like, the coloreds versus the non. Mm-hmm. So I really thought that was, a step in the right direction. I didn't know that it was Michael B. Jordan directing it this time around, so I think that's pretty awesome. A lot of flexing black men in this thing. Like, that was a lot of what it was.
Jonathan Banks, I'm really excited to see in the role. He's a great actor.
Mm-hmm, and he's on a hot streak.
And honestly, it looks like he is, even in the movie, coming to blow Michael B. Jordan out of the part.
Oof. Maybe they shouldn't have chosen him, because I was definitely more interested with what was going on with his character than Creed's. He just looks like...
Unfortunately also, and obviously I'm sure that Michael B. Jordan does a tremendous job acting in the part, but also splitting focus definitely can probably cause difficulties. You know, you're the main character and you're directing the movie. That's a really hard place to then also give, you know, the acting 100% completely, I think, all the way. Because you're doing a lot. You're spinning a lot of plates.
No, yeah, but, you know, I guess you gotta get your acting credits, your directing credits somewhere, you know? This is his third time around. He's got it in the bag. Was Tessa Thompson in the last one?
She's been in all three.
Dude, I didn't know that Tessa Thompson was in these movies. This is how much I've honestly seen the Creed movies. I saw the first one.
We also have the first one. We can rewatch it.
I've definitely seen the first one because I do remember old man Stallone shuffling in there as Rocky with his walker.
But I'm legitimately interested in this one, and I think that I might check it out in theaters.
Ooh, in theaters, you say?
Do you have anything else that you would like for the listeners?
Not that I can think of.
All right, well, I'm going to cut it short because guess what? We've got a whole bunch of movies to finish watching for the slasher extravaganza. We're watching, we've already watched all of the Child's Play franchise, thank you. We're almost done with Texas Chainsaw.
We've got, one left? Two?
We've got one Texas Chainsaw movie left.
Fantastic.
And then we're going to do the Leprechaun movies and the Psycho movies. And this is all for an episode next week. So get ready, get strapped in. We're going to jump off and go and watch a whole bunch of shit. And some of it might actually be literal shit. TBD. So it's going to be a good time either way.
Of the ones coming up next, which one are you looking the most forward to?
Leprechaun into Hood.
That's right. That was going to be my answer.
Actually, maybe even Leprechaun Back to the Hood.
Those are going to be the ones. If those aren't slam dunks, I'm going to be devastated forever.
Honestly, they had better slam dunk to funk.
That's right.
Because they go to the Hood.
That's right. It's the stereotype that just keeps cooking.
That's right. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. Definitely do come back next week. We're going to have Nick Delgadillo on. I might try and get us another guest or two. It's going to be a really great time.
We'll see what your sister's doing.
Yeah. Again, thank you guys, as always, for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.